Welcome to Long Layers with Mark. Okay, there's a few things I want to go over again. Remember the zones, top of the head, 1, 2, and 3. This is super important. Just remember that. Because when I'm talking about layers, a lot of the time I break down where I want the layers to be. So imagine you have a long layer client, but they just want layers in the bottom. You have to decide where you want those layers to be. A lot of the time we're taught to start layers in the nape, starting in the bottom, layering all the way to the top. I prefer to work top down because let's say somebody only wants a little bit of layering. I just want that layer to be from that top zone 1. Mm-hmm. I don't want it to be in zone 2 or zone 3. I just want it to be in zone 1 just to lay on top of the bottom length. If someone wants a lot of layers, I might start working into zone 2. And then your perimeter, where the hair comes from zone 3, we usually want to keep that stable. I very rarely layer anything in zone 3 if I'm doing a long layer haircut, unless they have more of a shag. So another thing I want to mention, I'll have you stand there still. When you're elevating with layers, there's 2 things that determine how soft or how heavy your layers are. One is elevation. The higher you elevate the hair, the softer your layers are going to be. If I elevated this hair all the way up here, this is going to be way softer than if I cut layers 90 degrees off the back of the head. That's going to be a lot harder. That will actually end up, if you cut square, that will come down looking like graduation on the bottom, on zone 2 and 3. So you'll look like you have graduation on top. So remember, the higher you elevate, if you want super soft layers, elevate higher. The other thing that changes your layers, once you decide your elevation, is the cutting angle. So the more inverted it is, short to long, the softer your layers are going to be as well. So I'm going to take you through 3 different layering techniques. We're just going to stay on the back here, and then I'll show you in a minute how to carry it through. But I'm going to show you a soft layering that just rests on the bottom. I'm going to go in and do a little bit more in zone 2, and then I'm going to go almost all the way to a shag so you can see what that looks like. And you can do it all in the same head. So I start center back, and I only take hair. I take a little bit from zone 2 as my guide. So when I elevate this, my guide from zone 2 is still down at the length. So I know that that's my guide, right? I don't want to cut into zone 2, and I like my layers really soft. So I'm looking where this hair is coming from zone 2. It's right there. And since I want short to long, I'm going to be cutting in this opposite direction like this. I'm elevating pretty high because I want it to be really soft. So now that is my guide, and that falls all the way down, just really softly on top of zone 2 and zone 3 down there. The way I do my layers to the back is I pivot, still using that center guide, working all the way to the back of the ear. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Elevating high, making sure I'm not cutting any hair from zone 2, cutting short to long. And I usually only take 2 or 3 sections in the crown, pivoting off that center section in the back. Just working until I get behind the ear, still elevating high, using that center guide. Zone 2 is right here is my guide, layering that. So you can see it's just really soft down there at the bottom. Continue going on this side. Pivoting off that center. Working behind the ear. And just look at that movement. Just look at that. It just falls really softly. You can also go in and detail, right? But let's say your client, they don't want them any shorter, but they want to see more shattering at the bottom. What would you do, Sydney? I just want to hear like another perspective, another hairstylist.
I don't know how to explain it because my mom taught me and she didn't give me a great explanation.
Okay.
She just...
Well, so here's what I'm gonna do. Like in my head, they don't want anything shorter, but they want more movement. They don't like how heavy it is at the bottom, right? So then what I'll do is I'll go back through and I'll take that center section, and instead of elevating as high, we'll elevate lower. Now I'm still looking at where the hair is coming from. I know I don't want to cut anything in zone 3 because we want our perimeter to still be strong, but she might want more layers through zone 2, right? So I would use my previous, and I would come out here and I could see that's my guide from the previous. This is the hair from the bottom of zone 2, so I'll just go ahead and cut that off. Okay? And I'll do the same thing, traveling around the head. I don't pull everything back to the same place because the head's round, so I want the layers to be soft. I don't want there to be a weight line right behind the ears. And I always like to point cut these, because why create a hard line that you just have to go back through and rake up again? That makes no sense to me. Because we want our layers soft. So you can see how that's a little bit more textured, right? And you can see my guide. It looks like I'm taking really large sections, but especially on long hair, I firmly believe that you should take larger sections to where you can really see what you're doing instead of taking small sections and getting lost in the haircut. Okay, so now you can see that's more textured in through there, right? So the one thing I do like to do, if they still want it a little bit more shattered out, I know that I don't want to layer zone 3, but I don't mind texturizing into it. So I will take vertical sections, comb this way so you can see. I will take vertical sections, comb down to 0 degrees, and then I can see where the perimeter is, where the layers come to, and there's usually a little corner. So I like to soften that corner just by breaking that up. It's not really breaking up the whole perimeter, it's just softening that corner. And then if you go through and do that, vertical sections all the way through, you're still gonna see that hard perimeter, your layers, and just softening right there. It's really important you don't elevate this, because if you elevate it, this will turn into graduation. It won't be 0 degrees anymore, and you might cut off layers into zone 3. So now that's super shattered and way more layers. Now, what if she wants a shag? So then, I'm gonna have you come around to this side. I will start in the crown, or the highest point of the head. If it's a little bit further, I just don't want to start too low. So I'll ask my client, I'll be like, okay, if you want a lot of layers, how short do you want them? Usually I don't like to go shorter than the round of the head, right? So I'm gonna say, okay, I'll play with this length, look, she wants a lot of layers, and then I'll elevate this up here and create a guide for myself. And I'll continue to look and see where it falls. So that's pretty short for her length of hair. We're gonna use that as a guide now. And if she wants a lot of layers, she probably doesn't want them to be blended too much. She probably wants a little bit more. So I'm not gonna elevate all the way up here. I'm gonna elevate pretty much square off the head. And I can see my little hairs right there as my guide. And I'm going to be looking in zone 2, right? I'm still working in zone 2 where the hair is coming from right now. And I know that if we're going this short with layers, zone 2 needs to be layered. So I'm gonna be looking for where hair is from zone 3. And can you see that connection, Sydney, from there?
Yes.
So hair from zone 3 is right here, zone 1 there. So I'm simply just connecting those. So I will travel around the head using that as my guide. Making sure I'm not cutting any hair. Every time I comb, I'm looking and seeing where the hair is coming from, just to make sure I don't cut into zone 3. And I will do a traveling guide until I get behind the ear. But it's still soft. Like, I don't feel like there's any edges or lines, even though there's a lot more layers and texture now. Work the other side. Hitting to right behind the ear. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So she has all these soft layers. So the reason I like to show the 3 different layers, just a little bit more, and a lot, is because it's really customizable. You don't have to do a haircut. You just kind of decide in your own head where you want the layers coming from, what zone on the head do you want them coming from, how much, what elevation you want. Do you want it to be super soft, elevated high? Do you want them to be a little bit stronger and thicker, elevated low? Now I will show you how I connect to the front. So I still work off of that one point. A lot of the time with layers, we're taught to do a traveling guide this way and elevate back. I don't do that. I like to still do a pivot from that point, diagonal forward. Let me grab a clip. So I will go all the way down to the front of the hairline, using that as my guide. Just so you can see this way. I will elevate up. And it's already pointed this way because we did so many layers, but I know if you go below zone 2 on the sides of the head, there is no zone 3, there is no perimeter, right? So if you overlayer hair in zone 2, that's where you're gonna create holes and it's gonna be really weird and shattered, not something you want. So I'm really only looking to connect hair in zone 1, which is this hair right in through here. It's coming from right around the round of the head, and I'm just gonna point cut into it. But all of this hair in zone 2, below the round of the head, I want to keep that intact. So I don't want to cut into that. And I will just keep taking diagonal forward. It's going to pivot like this until I get to the top of the head. So when I turn around this way, make sure I don't cut into zone 2. I'm going to elevate pretty high. Because you can see there's a line under here that you would think that you want to follow. Can you see that on the camera?
On this way you can.
Yeah, I don't. I want to actually start going the other direction because I want to go short to long from zone 1 to zone 2. She just doesn't have very much hair. It's harder to see.
She's thin, bitch.
So look and see where this hair is coming from in zone 2. When I pull this up, I'm not going to be cutting into this. I'm still really cutting hair in zone 1. We can go short to long. Take this last little bit. I'll turn it this way so you can see. Because now what's happening, now that we've rounded all the way to zone 1, only cutting hair in zone 1 because we pivoted, now we're saving length towards the front for face framing, for any fringe, anything you want to detail after. Because all this layering is internal layering. This isn't the external shape around the front. We're not worried about that yet. Last section. Cutting short to long. And this should be really soft because I'm elevating completely up. So if you want to see down here now, this is all layered, your perimeter is still there, and we can go in later in detail and decide what angle we want to do around the face. But all the layers are nice and soft. They flow from the back all the way to the front. So I'm going to do the other side and then we'll come back.